What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Cruising with Cruz. I am Cruz. Last time we talked about motorsports, and I really went in depth with all. Really went in depth with like my loving for every kind of discipline of motorsports, from IndyCar, NASCAR, F1, and all that. If you missed that video, I'll leave the link in the description so you can catch up. But this video is going to be all about NASCAR talk, because obviously I have my Dale Jr. shirt on. It's Speedweeks Daytona, and I think it's just fitting that I have NASCAR as its own video, because like I said, I love NASCAR. Even though in the last video I talked about where I think the state of the sport is at, that doesn't mean I like the sport. You know, kind of like on how I was like using the same template of how like I'm gonna get into what really got me into NASCAR, or like, you know, which each motorsport. This one, you know, I think what really caught my attention was, you know, when I was growing up, my dad loved NASCAR. He was actually a Rusty Wallace fan, and so he would watch the races every single weekend, you know, just like most race fans would. You know, most dads had their football, my dad had his NASCAR. So whenever he'd be watching it, you know, an up and coming Dale Jr. would be coming on screen, right, or they'd be talking about him. Funny story is, every time they said junior, it would catch my attention, because I am named after my dad. So I'm the junior, of course, too. He's the senior, I'm the junior. So whenever I heard junior, of course it was catching my attention. And as time grew on, you know, at first I was more of a Kyle Petty fan. Why? Because of the 44 Hot Wheels car. You know, like I talked about in the Cars video, I loved Hot Wheels. So obviously the way NASCAR promoted their cars with Hot Wheels, it was a perfect combination, you know. So of course I had a bunch of stock cars, you know, from the Hot Wheels line. You know, I had like the Terry Labonte, Mark Martin, all those drivers. And then essentially they released a set where it's not slot cars, but it's like a big old oval track that you charge up the car and they just start going in circles, you know. That was really cool. And I had the Daytona one where as soon as you see your car start dying down on power, you just hit a flick and it bring it into the pit stall, and you push it down to charge it, and once it was charged, you push it out of the pit and it just starts going again, you know. Man, those were the days. Boy, we had really good toys, I would say, growing up as a kid. Anyways, yeah, you know, as time went on and as I started getting older, of course eventually I became a Dale Jr. fan. And most notably I became a junior fan is when obviously, you know, the 2001 Daytona July race. That was a big one, but I didn't really know much of what was going on. Like, I do remember the day when Dale died, and that was pretty significant, because, you know, I remember seeing my mom crying, and then my dad was just like in shock, like he was in awe, like, of what happened, you know, especially when they announced, when Mike Helton announced that Dale Earnhardt passed away. Like, it was a pretty big shake in the world of NASCAR, you know, just mainly in the state of motorsports, you know. But as continue on with the timeline of me growing with the sport, you know, when everyone started healing, I remember my dad went crazy when Rusty Wallace won the 2001 California race. He went nuts. I remember that very clearly too. Like, I remember he was so happy that he was like, let's just go swimming, because we live in an apartment complex and it was hot that day, so we just went swimming after that race. And yeah, I remember he was just so happy that Rusty won that race. And of course, when Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the July race, that was a pretty big, you know, moment in the sport too. But fast forward to 2004, when I was slowly watching the races again and kind of engaging into it, the 04 Daytona 500. I don't think I need to touch much detail on that, because we all know who won that one. And yeah, you know, but then again, I kind of wasn't really invested in the sport until the chase for the cup, because that's when they obviously changed the format of how the champion was crowned as the Cup Series champion. So now that they changed the format, obviously my dad was invested, especially since he was trying to see if Rusty Wallace would make at the time they call it the chase, And I don't think he didn't, but I know Junior did. And I remember I was very heartbroken when he got wrecked by Carl Edwards in the Atlanta fall race. And that's when I knew his title hopes were just going to go down the drain. But fast forward to 2005, my dad was more invested because obviously that was Rusty's last season, and supposedly Mark Martin's too. But that's when I really started paying more attention to the racing, especially when Carl Edwards was like, especially during the chase. I remember back in the day, the way they kind of hyped up the chase back in the day was very intriguing, you know, because it's like, all right, you got 10 drivers, before it was 12, and before we had the whole playoff format, it was 10, and they would hype up like who's gonna get in and who's gonna get out, you know. And obviously Richmond was the cutoff race for a very long period of time. But anyways, yeah, just seeing like how like the points were playing out, you know, it was really cool, you know. Like, I didn't think much like it would change the state of the sport. But after 2005 and Tony Stewart won the championship, you know, the following year, that's 06, you know, like I talked about in my last video, 06 was a very pivotal year for me because that's when I really was invested in watching like not only NASCAR but all these other disciplines of motorsports, you know. Like I said, the preseason Thunder, the Rolex 24, and then there was Speedweeks at Daytona. So of course I was invested in that, you know. And Chad Knaus gets freaking booted because he made some illegal modifications to the 500 car, and of course, you know, they get the intern crew chief and Jimmy Johnson wins. Cool, right? I felt like after that 500 win, that's kind of what started Johnson's legacy. You know, obviously he had wins before, and I think when he choked last year in 2005 trying to win that championship against Stewart, that kind of it sparked something in that Lowe's team, you know. And he wins 2006, 7, 8, 9, and 10 championships. So that's 5 straight, and I'm like, oh my god. And of course they had to change the format up with the chase, so I think 2011 was a really good year too, watching, because that Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards battle. And then 2012, Brad K versus Johnson, that was a good one. And of course Jimmy wins the 2013 championship, and then after that they're like, all right, let's introduce the playoffs. And then history wrote itself, but Johnson still ended up winning a 7th championship, I believe in 2017, I think it was. Yeah, 2017. So there's that, you know. But I feel like I went too fast on this timeline because I talked about Johnson winning all those championships. But anyways, kind of backtrack a little bit. But yeah, 2006 was like the first year I really invested in watching every single race of the season. And I remember too, because, you know, as I have these little die casts here, I used to kind of like reenact the races when I was a kid, just playing them on I want to say it was a shag carpet, but it was carpet where if you rode on it, I could actually write out a track layout. So I'd recreate Daytona, Indy, Bristol, you know, you name it, and then I make it look like a race weekend. Anyways, so the spring race, Richmond race, that was one race that I was kind of partially paying attention to because, of course, it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. and he was running good that race. I remember it was him, Harvick, and Hamlin, and I think Kyle Busch too was running good that race. Those 4 cars were really good, but I know Harvick had a much more competitive car, or a much more of a winning car. But then Juniors just sneaks his way in, and towards the closing laps, you know, he takes the lead and he ends up getting that win. And I remember I was so happy when he won that race, you know. And that's when I was like, all right, you know, Junior's gonna cap off this year, you know, this is his redemption year. And he was very consistent, you know, throughout the season. Makes the chase, you know, and he is doing really good in the chase standings. And then we're going into the fall race at Talladega. Mind you, they repaved Talladega, and so these cars are, you know, they're glued to the ground and they're bunched up. And I was really, really invested in that race. One, because I actually ended up buying, I ended up having like a really nice Dale Earnhardt Jr. blanket. So I was just cozied up in it, and I was just, I didn't even bring out my cards. I was just watching the race from start to finish, you know, because it was just really good racing overall, you know. Anyways, so as that race is playing out, you know, we're into the closing laps and Junior's leading, and of course there's Johnson and Vickers right behind him. Until this day, that last lap was probably one of the most heartbreaking last laps I've ever seen in my life, because I was very pissed. I remember as a kid, I was so pissed. And my dad was like, what happened? And so I had to go from my room to the living room to put on the TV to show him what happened. And he was just shocked too. Like, I don't think no one saw Vickers pulling that kind of stunt. But then again, when I look back on it now, Vickers was kind of like a really bad driver. But yeah, that stung so bad. And yeah, that after that, I was just like, I don't know if he'll be able to win it. Of course, you know, Johnson ends up winning that 2006 championship by not a large margin of points, but he finished where he needed to finish to get that championship. So that was history in the making. In 2007, I couldn't really watch it as much because we moved and we couldn't really have cable at the time. So I missed watching the 07 500, pretty much a good majority of that season until the chase. If you guys don't remember, the old rabbit ears, you were able to get local channels. And I remember when they were showing the chase back in the day, they were showing them on ABC because that's when ESPN took over. That's when they had Fox, TNT, and then ESPN. And so ESPN had their last 10 races on ABC. So I was able to watch all the races on ABC, and man, just seeing Johnson take that other championship, I was like, dude, no way this is happening right now. Like, there's just, like, how? Come 2008, you know, I was able to watch that year, and I remember that's when Junior went to the 88 car. And when I was watching the Bud Shootout and I saw him win that Bud Shootout, I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be our year. Like, I think, like, I have a feeling with him going to Hendrick Motorsports with the dominant year that they had last season, I was like, of course he's gonna be good. Oh man, it took him a while, but he ended up getting that win at Michigan, an official points paying win. And yeah, Johnson ends up winning 2008. And then let's fast forward to 2009, and oh, that 2009 Daytona 500 was a very interesting race, to say the least. Well, first, it was the Bud Shootout. I remember that Bud Shootout was just insane, because like there was a lot of wrecks in that race, I remember. And I think it was either Biffle or Harvick that won that race. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, because I don't have like my little fact sheet. I'm just going off of memory right now. Which, by the way, full disclosure, most of these videos I'm doing, I'm just going off of memory. I do have like a little thing that I'm like, little notes that are kind of just reminding me of what I want to talk about. Because like I said, I want to be authentic with these videos without having to look up information and stuff like that. So I apologize, especially on that last video too, because I know I missed some crucial points and drivers' names on certain things. Anyways, so leading up to the 2009 Daytona 500, there was obviously weather in the area. So there was a possibility they weren't going to get that race entirely in. So 500's going, and Junior's not having a good race. He's kind of running, I think he was like in the mid-pack, towards the back of the pack. And then it gets to a point where I think he either got a penalty or something like that essentially made him go a lap down. Caution comes out. And obviously back in that time, this is before they had the double file restarts for, you know, the lead lap cars. They did have double file restarts, but obviously the outside line was for cars on the lead lap and the inside line was for cars that are a lap down. So I think it was Vickers, not even Vickers, I think it was either Elliott's, it was someone else, and then it was Montoya, Vickers, and Junior. I think that's how I remember it. Quote me if I'm wrong, but at least I know Vickers was ahead of Junior. They're getting up to speed, going into turns 1 and 2, and they're going at the backstretch. And I remember, I think it was Larry McReynolds. He's like, that ain't gonna work. As soon as Junior's going trying to pass Vickers, and then he just comes up and just clips Vickers and takes out a third, if not 2/3 of that field. And I'm like, and then you hear Darrell Waltrip just go, that's so wrong. And then Larry's like, I don't care who you are, that's totally uncalled for. And I was just like, oh my god, he took out the entire field. But I was just happy because I was like, all right, now he has a fighting chance to get back on the lead lap. Of course, he couldn't get on the lead lap because he was the cause of incident. And since if you're the cause of incident, you don't get your lap back. So, of course, Junior had to wait another lap or another round of green flag racing until the caution came out. Caution comes out, he gets back on the lead lap. Cool. But race is already doomed to being done. And once we're in the final stages of what we didn't know was the end of the race, Elliott Sadler is leading in the closing stages of that race, and right when Matt Kenseth makes a pass, going into turn 2, coming out of it, that's when they bring out the caution for the weather, and that's when they declare the race was over, and Matt Kenseth wins, and it's like, all right, cool, Kenseth wins, and then Kenseth goes on a reign where he wins the second race of the season. And I think the third race too, if I'm not mistaken. Like the schedule's like now changed so much that it's not as consistent like it used to be. But I remember I was mad because I had a friend in middle school that I was going with, and he was a Kenseth fan. So I just hated how he was just happy that Kenseth was just winning, and of course Junior's just like having horrible luck. But yeah, that year was very horrible for Junior. Like he ended up missing the chase, I remembered. And of course, it was between Mark Martin and Jimmy Johnson. But I remember I was invested too because Juan Montoya was doing really good, especially ever since because that was right around the time where we had a recession in the economy. So Chip Ganassi and DEI at the time ended up merging, so they ended up calling it Ganassi Racing. So they had Truex and Juan Montoya as their 2 cars, and then they had the 8 car for a little bit until they ran out of funding for that car. But I remember I was invested watching Juan Montoya too, because Juan Montoya was really good, especially in that Chevy powered equipment. And that heartbreaking race in the 2009 Brickyard 400, oh, I was so gutted for him. I was like, man, dude. And of course NASCAR had to make a bad call on him on that one. So, and then he ends up getting wrecked, and of course who ends up getting a part of that wreck? Junior. So oh yeah, that was 2009 was a very forgettable year for sure for Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans. I remember that. And then 2010, there was hope. He almost won that 500, but McMurray ended up winning that one. But I remember there was hope for Junior because he would get a couple poles. You know, he would run decently, but the car would just fall off. Like it was just. There was no start to finish for Junior. It was like start, he was good, but then right at the end, it was just horrible. And I think he ended up missing the chase again in 2010. And of course, Johnson wins that one too. So, and I remember going into 2011, they repaved Daytona. Junior gets a pretty much all of Hendrick Motorsports except for Johnson. They all get new crew chiefs. Alec Gibson goes with Jeff Gordon, Steve Letarte with Junior, and I don't know who ends up going with Mark Martin that year, but I personally remember I didn't really care much because I was happy that Junior had a fighting chance, and Junior gets the pull. Junior gets the pull for the 500. I'm like, yes, you know, but we were introduced to a different style of racing that year because that's when they brought in the 2-car tandem. So that was interesting to watch, but yeah, Trevor Bayne ends up winning that Daytona 500, and that was actually a funny story. Is I remember having when Xbox Live was a thing, and that was like the beginning of online gaming. I had my little Xbox Live crew that would watch NASCAR with that we watch NASCAR every Sunday, and we had a friend of ours that was happy that Trevor Bayne won, and we were just like, "What? You're a Trevor Bayne fan?" Anyways, it was just funny because like it was just like a one-hit wonder for Trevor Bayne. But hey, he's now kind of having a resurgence right now in his career, and he's racing for Joe Gibbs Racing part-time. So who knows? But anyways, yeah, 2011 season was a good year. 2011 Coca-Cola 600. Oh my god, I think I was just as heartbroken that race as I was in the 06 Dega race. Because literally, Junior had that win in the bag. He's leading that last lap, coming out of turn 4, or coming into turn 3. He starts sputtering. You see him like trying to shake it, and he runs out of gas. And we just see Kevin Harvick win it. And I'm like, I think I cried because he lost. That's how like heartbroken I was. I was like, dude, no way. But I mean, after that race, you know, they showed consistency. He made the chase that year, which was good, but they weren't really to capitalize on winning, you know, except for I think it was like I want to say either 2011 or 12 at Homestead is when he was running really good at that track. I think it was 2012 because that was before they switched to the new car, I think. But anyways, yeah, going into 2012, you know, that Daytona 500 was interesting. I remember like I was on Xbox Live with my friends, and we watched that race from start to finish. Or I got on late because I got off of school at the time, and I got home maybe after we were 30 laps in, because there was a big one that happened with Elliott Sadler that collected Johnson, Danica Patrick. Oh yeah, but yeah, I remember that entire race, and when Montoya hits the freaking jet drag, I'm like, what is going on? And yeah, I remember that race ending super late, but I didn't stop watching because I was hoping Junior wins, and nope, my best friend's favorite driver ends up winning it again, Matt Kenseth, and Junior comes in second. I'm like, ugh. But 2012 was a promising year. Junior gets that redemption win at Michigan, and oh my god, I remember I didn't watch that race because I remember watching the races. I was just like, maybe me watching them was bringing Junior bad luck. And sure enough, the one race I didn't watch, he wins it, and I'm like, thank God. And I was so happy. I was happy that he finally won, and I think Junior was back on track. I think it was 2012. He was running really good at Homestead, and he almost won, but ended up finishing. I think he came home with the top 5. I'm not sure, because I was between Brad Kay and Jimmy Johnson. And as you can tell, at this point, I'm not talking about Johnson as much because he was really good at racing. Especially, okay, so I will admit that 2012 Watkins Glen race was great from start to finish. I think that was probably one of the most entertaining road course races that I've seen, and rightfully so, because now we have more road courses on the schedule now, But 2013, new car. I remember when they were announcing the new cars, I was really excited. Chevy, or I think it was Toyota that showed their car first, and then Dodge, rest in peace Dodge, and then Ford showed their car, and then Chevy was the last one to show it, and then they had a big showing with the big 4 Chevy teams with Hendrick, Earnhardt Ganassi, Stewart Haas at the time, and then RCR, and they all showed up this new Chevy SS, and I was like, man, that car is beautiful. And yeah, 2013, story is not any different. Junior finishes in the top 3 again in that race. I think he finished second again in that race. I'm not sure. But Junior showed some promise that year. He didn't win that year, but he was very, very, very consistent that year, like running up front. And here we go, 2014, 10 years ago. And oh man, I'm not gonna get into too much detail with that Daytona 500 because, man, I was on the phone with my best friend because he was like, he just wanted to talk to me, and I was like, dude, just watch the race with me, because he's not a NASCAR fan, so I told him to put it on, and we were watching it, and as we're having these green white as we're getting close to the end of the race, we have this green white checkered, and then he was like, what's that on his front grill? And and there was that big piece of Bear Bond on his front grill, and I'm like, oh no. And that scared me. I don't know. I don't know.
Still working.
Sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, I'm not gonna stop the video right now. I don't know what happened. Anyways, so yeah, we're on the closing laps of that race, and oh, I remember I was just on edge. I was just on edge like any other Dale Jr. fan, I'm sure. And I remember it was the last green white checkered, and Junior's just holding him off, and he starts pulling away. He starts pulling a good distance, but he was able to manage the blocks, control the field, and then that last lap, I'm just praying that he comes home with that checkered flag. And sure enough, when they come out of turn 4, they crash right behind him. That caution comes out, he's still in front, and he wins the Daytona 500 again. And the way his excitement on the radio, I remember crying. I was so happy. Those were tears of joy, because I'm like, man, dude, he finally did it. Like, he won another Daytona 500, like something his dad wasn't able to do. 10 years from the day that he won the 500 the first time, man. Oh man, and that car, that National Guard car, was beautiful. I think that's probably one of my all-time favorite Dale Jr. schemes. Just that red, the white, and the blue. The way that car just looked was just so beautiful. And yeah, and like he said it too in that interview, he's like, we're in the playoffs now, you know, and that's when they introduced the playoffs. So that win really kind of propelled him, and that's kind of changed the mentality of a lot of drivers too. And Junior was running really consistent, and Steve Letarte were able to. He and Steve Letarte, remember, they were able to take gambles. Junior ended up sweeping both Pocono races. He missed his shot at advancing into the next round after Talladega, but he ended up winning at Martinsville Clock, you know, and that was a big what if, you know, if he did, it was still in the playoffs, would he won a championship, you know? But no, Harvick ended up winning that one, and honestly, that was a really good season. Just because I'm pretty sure a lot of my fellow millennials would agree with me on this, but that package that they had for all the tracks was just amazing. And then with this new format that they introduced with the chase, it was just very intriguing from start to finish of that season. And that was one of the most invested seasons I've ever had in my entire life. And yeah, 2014, I think I kind of want to end on 2014 because I'm not going to continue on with 15, 16, 17, because I didn't watch all those seasons, you know, especially Junior's last race, when he ran like a nod to his number 8 scheme with that Exalta scheme. Like, that was pretty cool. And then, like, for him to retire, shotgun a beer with his crew members, you know, I'm pretty sure you guys if you guys watch his podcast, you know, he and Marty Smith were talking about how he was there to shotgun a beer with them, you know. But then after that, you know, I was still invested because I was still also a Carl Edwards fan too, and that's the thing I'm gonna do in a different video. It's like my rankings on my favorite drivers. But obviously, as you guys can tell, I was a hard Junior fan, and I always will be, you know. And I love how now he tries to be so much more a part of the sport than ever before, and he's trying to make a difference in the sport, you know, with him helping bring back North Wilkesboro. I think that was pretty cool of him to do that, you know. I think that's what the sport needed. Especially with him being vocal on a lot of strong points with the state of the sport right now. And I hope and pray that NASCAR listens to him. Or I think a lot of us Junior fans would agree, and even diehard NASCAR fans would want Junior to have some kind of affiliation with NASCAR, so he can vocalize strong points that what the sport needs, you know, because we need a lot of things in this sport to do good. Because right now, I get it, they're trying to draw a new audience and still try to keep an old audience, but it's hard, you know, especially with this new TV deal that they announced. I'm not going to get into that detail because, oh my god, that is just a lot. Anyways, yeah, I was a Junior. I will always be a Junior fan, especially when he came back and runs the Xfinity Series, and when he won his last win at Richmond. I thought that was pretty cool that he got to have a win, and he got to celebrate it with his, not only his wife but his kids too, you know. But yeah, once Junior retired, there was the Edwards saga too, and oh man, when Edwards went to Gibbs, you know. Oh, I think I never been more gutted for Carl Edwards, especially me being also an Edwards fan. I think 08 and 2011 hurt because he was very close. But I think 2017, when Johnson ended up winning his 7th title, I think that one hurt way more. Because he knew Logano was going to make a pass, and he timed that block. Like, if he timed the block a lot better, I think he would have probably, that race would have ended differently. But nope, he ended up getting clipped and causing a huge wreck, and I'm like, no. After that, that's when that one hurt, because I was like, man, dude, and I felt bad for him. But honestly, the way he showed his sportsmanship, he went up to that 22 box, and he said, you know, go get it, go win that championship, you know. I mean, Carl Edwards, I don't think there's anyone that would hate Carl Edwards, to be honest. I think probably when he and Brad K had their little feud, there was probably people that didn't like Carl Edwards. But me personally, I liked Carl Edwards because of his sportsman, like how he's like really good with his competitors, and he showed really good sportsmanship. There we go. And he was such a good driver, you know. And when he had to retire so early, I don't blame him, because I think after he retired, Junior retired. Of course, I think Junior was retiring that year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how exactly it went. I don't know if Junior retired before Edwards did or after. Anyways, yeah, you know, first Gordon, then Stewart, then Junior, Edwards, and then it just caused another ripple effect, you know. And Then you know, and in 2020 Johnson retires, well, semi-retires, because then he goes IndyCar race and then comes back to NASCAR, and now he's running Toyotas. What a time we're living in. But anyways, you know, I feel like I'm diving too in depth with this NASCAR topic, but you know, I just wanted to elaborate why I love the sport, you know. And right now we're in Speed Week, and it sucks, you know, because I miss seeing, you know, like I said, the Budweiser shootout and ARCA race, and then it's qualifying the next day. Then they're off they're off for a couple of days, and the trucks are out there. But the Grand National cars, and you got the IROC series that ran at Daytona too for a good period of time. I miss the IROC series, you know. But you know, I still watch the sport, you know. I think right now with the new drivers that are out there, my favorite drivers, honestly, my favorite driver right now is Alex Bowman, and a lot of people might not like me for that, but I don't care. My favorite story about Bowman is if he ever sees this video or watches it, or someone clips this part out. I remember back in either 2014 or 15 when he was living in Arizona, he owned a Miata, and I was following him on Instagram, and he was selling it. And I remember I reached out to him saying I wanted to buy that Miata. You know, he ended up selling it to someone else more locally, but I was willing to go drive out there to buy that Miata because his Miata was clean. He had an NA Miata with the flip lights, and oh man, I never thought he would go from that to being racing in one of the teams I dreamt of racing. So that's why I love Alex Bowman, you know. And the fact that he had, I don't care what people say about him, he literally had to race like the crappiest of crappiest teams, and now he's racing for a top tier team. Yeah, he may not be as the greatest as like his teammates like Kyle Larson or even Chase Elliott. I think he might be a little bit better than Chase right now, but I don't know. But hey, he's a capable driver, and I like Alex Bowman, you know. As a matter of fact, right now Hendrick Motorsports, with the exception of William Byron, I like them all, you know. I'm a Larson fan. I like Chase Elliott, you know, and even Ryan Blaney when he won the championship last year. I was happy, you know. That was a good thing. That was a good arc for him, you know. He was consistent, you know, and he made it count when it really needed to matter the most, and he won the championship, you know. So as of the state of the sport where it's at right now, you know, I'm still giving it a chance, you know. It's not like I'm not gonna stop watching it completely, no, because, you know, I still love NASCAR, you know. As a matter of fact, I like, you know, the iRacing stuff that I can be a part of, you know. And I don't want to stop talking about NASCAR too, because I hope to see it come back to the way it was like back in the day. It might not be exactly the same, but it could be just kind of like it, you know. And so I really do hope that the sport does, you know, have a resurgence and has like a new life into it, you know. I like where these cars are at, you know, and I hope they make better changes for, you know, the short tracks, and, you know, even with the schedule moving forward, you know. I think right now that's kind of a big factor too. And, you know, there's a lot of variables right now, but as far as where I'm at with NASCAR, I still watch it, you know. I love it. I love my sport, you know. I just think there's some major changes that need to be done, but, you know, I still watch it, you know, and I love watching it, and I don't think I'm gonna stop watching it or even taking my time out of my day to catch up on it. And, you know, with this channel too, I hope to bring you guys some vlogs of me at some races too, you know. My goal is to hopefully try to go to the Brickyard 400 this year. That is a definitely big goal, so I can bring you guys that kind of content too. But yeah, you know, I still love my NASCAR, you know, and even though a lot of my favorite drivers that I used to watch aren't a part of it anymore, I still have new favorite drivers, you know. Like I said, Alex Bowman is one of those drivers, you know, and I love that Dale Jr. kind of tapped him to, you know, kind of take over his ride, you know, and that's why I liked Alex Bowman even more, you know. That being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be posting more content in terms of related with motorsports and even NASCAR too, you know. But it's not just going to be that kind of stuff, because I think the next topic I'm going to talk about is why I have this tattoo, because I know a lot of you guys, if you guys know what this tattoo means, I'm going to elaborate more as to why I have that tattoo and why I love that particular anime. So thank you for watching this episode. Please like, subscribe, hit that ring notification so that way you guys can be updated with the videos, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.